Last week, you had names like Jonathan Taylor, David Montgomery, Trey Tucker, Caleb Williams, Hunter Henry, and Mark Andrews go off in fantasy football, and they were the reason why a lot of you guys won your matchup. Well, in today's video, we're talking about 10 players that are going to do the same in week number 4, guys that are set to absolutely dominate, go nuclear, if you will. All right, first player we're going to talk about here, the rookie running back. Finally, if you were patient with him last week, it paid off. Omarionnnnn at the New York Football Giants. I cannot explain to you how much Omarionnn is set to smash in this matchup. The Giants are the second best matchup for your fantasy running back. When you look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed this year, Giants currently top 2 in rushing yards and total yards allowed per game. They're giving up over 153 rushing yards per game. In week number 1, Bill Krosky-Merritt had his best day as a pro, 8.2 yards per carry, ripped off multiple big runs, got into the end zone. Javonte Williams, one of his best days as a professional as well, over 130 all-purpose yards, 5.4 yards per carry, a TUD, 25 fantasy points. Again, all versus this Giants defense. This is also the 5th largest spread of the week, 6.5 points. The Chargers are favored, even though it's in New York. That tells us that Vegas anticipates, and I anticipate as well, the Chargers being able to run out the game in the second half. Hampton should be crucial to that, especially now that Najee Harris is no longer involved. The Chargers also have the 7th highest implied team point total. Now, here's where things get really important, because for Hampton, it was looking murky between Najee Harris and his usage. But obviously with Najee Harris going down last week in week number 3, Hampton had the 3rd highest utilization rate of any running back, had a higher utilization rate than Jonathan Taylor and Bijan Robinson. All signs point to another huge fantasy day. I'm predicting 18 or more touches, 90 plus all-purpose yards, and I think he gets into the end zone again. All right, that takes us to my spicy, hot, bold take of the week. Y'all ready for this? Last week we talked about Nico Collins, and we hit this week in week number 4. The Denver Broncos are going to light up the Cincinnati Bengals through the air like a Christmas tree. Bo Nix, top 6 finish at the quarterback spot. Courtland Sutton, top 12 finish at the wide receiver spot. These guys are both going to smash. Oddly enough, the Bengals give up the 5th most points when you look at schedule adjusted fantasy points to both quarterbacks and wide receivers. And by the way, all the points allowed we're going to look at is schedule adjusted according to 4for4. But the Bengals right now are top 8 in passing yards, and total points given up. Okay? They give up over 30 points per game. They give up over 240 passing yards per game. The Broncos have the 5th highest implied team point total of the week, right up there with the elite offenses like the Rams, the Packers, and specifically for Courtland Sutton, he had the 3rd highest target share of any wide receiver in week number 3. A lot of people were worried, oh no, is Troy Franklin the next wide receiver 1? And in week number 3, Courtland Sutton reminded y'all, nah, I'm that dude. I'm that alpha. I think he's going to do that again in week number 4. Only Puka and Tet McMillan had a higher target share last week. And I know Bo Nix has been off to a rough start. If you guys drafted him, I hear you. It's been frustrating. I have him in the flock league. But this is the matchup for him to get right back on track and to smash for your fantasy lineup. So don't steer away from him now. All right, the 4th player that I think is going to smash this week, and this is a little bit of a projection, okay? But we got to make some calls here on this video. TreVeyon Henderson versus the Carolina Panthers. Now, here's what's weird. When you look at schedule adjusted, points allowed, the Panthers are technically not a good matchup. They're technically the 5th worst matchup for your fantasy running back. But I think there's context involved there. Okay, so first of all, right now, the Panthers are top 8 in rushing yards allowed per game. So where you attack the Panthers, they actually have a pretty decent secondary. You don't attack them through the air. And the Falcons found that out the hard way last week because Michael Penix was picked off twice. They couldn't get anything going through the air. You attack this team on the ground. Just ask the Jacksonville Jaguars, who in week number 1, Travis Etienne had 156 all-purpose yards, almost 9 yards per carry, one of his best days as a pro. Last week, despite the team losing 30-0, Bijan Robinson still had over 111 all-purpose yards at 5.5 yards per carry. Again, the way to attack this team is on the ground, and I think the Patriots know that. Here's the good news for Henderson. In week 3, he had the highest utilization score of any New England backfield mate, okay? He was the number 1 utilized guy. And for the first time this year, this is important, for the first time this year, he also had the most designed rushing attempts. And he also led the team in snap percentage at 48% of the snaps. Now, that had a lot to do with the fumbles of Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. And let me tell you something. If you think Mike Vrabel is just going to let 2 fumbles slide and not show any action the next week, I think we see 2 different coaches. Mike Vrabel is going to be pissed about the fumbles, and I think we're going to see finally Henderson lead the way to start the game as well. I'm predicting at least 17 touches, 4 targets, gives you a safe PPR floor, and 16 plus PPR points. Okay, the 5th player. If you've owned this guy, it's been a little up and down, but Jakobi Meyers is set to smash in week number 4. So he faced the Chicago Bears. That's technically the 4th best matchup for your fantasy wide receiver. Here's the deal. Chicago, through the first 3 weeks, are top 6 in passing yards allowed per game, top 4 in total yards allowed per game, and total points given up per game, giving up over 4 touchdowns per game. So check this out. Plenty of wide receivers have dominated this defense. So, for example, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 3 touchdowns, almost a 40 bomb. Jamison Williams, his best game this year. George Pickens had almost 18 PPR points. More specifically, when you look at this matchup, keep in mind that Jakobi Meyers spends over 50% of his time on the field in the slot alignment, and that is where you want to attack the Chicago Bears. No team in the NFL is giving up more points per game to slot wide receivers in fantasy football than the Chicago Bears. This is also tied for the 4th highest over-under of the week, 47.5 points. You got 2 teams with terrible defenses. The Chicago Bears, the Las Vegas Raiders. These are 2 teams that are getting just poured points each and every week, all right? Pouring honey all over these defenses, all right? I know, pause, all right? But these 2 teams are drowning in defensive points allowed, okay? So we should see a huge game. Geno Smith, he does rely on Jakobi Meyers. I'm predicting at least 7 catches and 80 plus yards for Jakobi Meyers here in week number 4. All right, my 6th start. This is the tight end start of the week. And some of you might be upset because I'm probably not diving deep enough into my bag, but look at the title of the video for a second. Damn, okay? We're not talking about guys that might be okay. We're talking about guys that are going to go off. We're talking Jake Ferguson versus the Green Bay Packers. Everything is set. The stars are aligned for Jake Ferguson to smash again. The Packers are the 9th best matchup for your tight end. This is the 4th highest over-under of the week. At least it's tied for 4th at 47.5 points. And more importantly, the Cowboys are currently 6.5 point dogs, even though it's at Dallas. It's at home. The Cowboys are almost 7-point dogs. That's because Vegas anticipates the Packers being up for the majority of this game. Could you think of a better game script for Jake Ferguson? Think about why he was so good last week. The Cowboys were down the entire game versus the Chicago Bears, and Dak Prescott, with no CeeDee Lamb, had to keep targeting Jake Ferguson each and every drive. That's the beautiful garbage time that we want for Jake Ferguson again in week number 6. The Packers defense versus Titans, by the way, Sam Laporta had his best day of the year. Zach Ertz had his best day of the year. So you can definitely rely on attacking defenses with tight ends against Green Bay, right? Also, Jake Ferguson, 2nd highest target share of any tight end this year, only behind Trey McBride. 26% target share. And with CeeDee Lamb going out, I think that number only gets higher. So I'm predicting at least 9 targets and 14 plus PPR points in week number 4. Look, the 2025 season in fantasy football, it's crazy. It's chaos. There's always people being cut and injured and trades happening. So the secret weapon for you is going to be the 2025 season pass. With my promo code LAND, it's a $34 one-time purchase. You can check out that link in the description. You get access to my weekly rankings, rest of season rankings. As soon as I hit submit, you'll know exactly what my thoughts are. You get access to some vouchers to come ask us questions on the live stream, as well as access to all of the premium tools like the trade calculator on the Flock Fantasy website. So check that out in the description if you want to support the show, as well as get an incredible value in return for your fantasy football year. Okay, this next player is going to be controversial. I already know that the top comment on any video this week is that Chase Brown sucks. All right. I mean, I've seen that in my own content, but I am not giving up on Chase Brown just yet. Okay. This is a great matchup for him to bounce back. The Broncos are currently giving up the 4th most points to fantasy running backs. It's the 4th best matchup when you look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. Jonathan Taylor versus this team. And I know this is Jonathan Taylor. I know he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. Okay. I know, but Jonathan Taylor had 215 all-purpose yards, 6.5 yards per carry almost 30 points versus this team. Omarionnnnn, the guy that everybody was panicking about just a week ago, he comes out and has a career day, 129 all-purpose yards, a touchdown, almost 25 PPR points. Here's the deal. After the Joe Burrow injury, way too many people, and I mean this, way too many people were underestimating the importance of Joe Burrow to this offense. I saw it all over Twitter. I did not understand it. I saw it in our comment section. However, after Jake Browning's first start, way too many people are overcorrecting this entire offense, putting it way too much in either end of the pendulum, right? For example, Jake Browning, we've seen him as a starter before. That was in 2023. He started 7 games for the Bengals when Joe Burrow went down with an injury. In 4 out of those 7 games, the Bengals scored 27 or more offensive points or total points, right? So in 4 out of those 7 games, the Bengals were putting up huge amount of fantasy points. So does Chase Brown have top 6 upside this year? No. However, he will still be a crucial part of an offense that will be much better in week 4 than they were in week number 3. I'm predicting at least 18 touches, 75 all-purpose yards, and I do believe Chase Brown gets into the end zone here in week number 4. I think you'll have a little bit more confidence in him next week than you do this week. My 8th player for you, how about slick Ricky Pearsall versus the Jacksonville Jaguars? Now, I know he's dealing with the injury. I know the practice reports look weird. You guys got to stop freaking out about Wednesday practice reports. But here's what Ricky said himself. He said, if there was a game today, I would play. Ricky Pearsall said he's not worried about his knee. He's just dealing with some soreness, okay? Now, the Jags in 2025, Jamar Chase had his best day, 14 catches, 165, over 36 fantasy points. Nico Collins had his best day, 8 catches, 104 yards and a touchdown. Nico Collins, my hot take of the week last week. He came out here and dominated. And more specifically for Ricky Pearsall, Jags boundary corners are getting burnt to a toast every single week. When you look at points allowed to outside wide receivers in fantasy football, the Jags are only second to the Cowboys. Okay, only the Cowboys give up more points to boundary wide receivers. This is also the 8th highest implied team point total for the 49ers. We should get Brock Purdy back. Ricky Pearsall was also tied for the 2nd highest utilization rate of any receiver in week number 3. So the breakout is happening. I'm predicting 6 catches, 100+ yards in week number 4. Okay, at number 9, I've saved one of my most confident takes for now, and that is Josh Jacobs at the Dallas Cowboys. Remember earlier how we said, you know what? Packers are probably going to be up in this game. Who does that benefit? Definitely benefits Josh Jacobs. Definitely helps Josh Jacobs that the Cowboys are the 7th best matchup for running backs. Cowboys defense in 2025, giving up the 3rd most yards per game, have given up the 6th most total points allowed per game. I mean, this is also tied for the 4th highest over-under of the week. Packers are heavy favorites. Packers have the 2nd highest implied team point total of the week. Everything is in alignment for Josh Jacobs to go out there and absolutely smash this week. I'm predicting 20 touches, 120 all-purpose yards, and 20+ PPR points. Now, just recording this video, I built out my latest DFS lineup on the FastDraft app with their Quick 6 Super Slam contest. I am playing Josh Jacobs at the Cowboys. We just talked about that. AJ Brown versus the Bucks. Omarionnnnn at the Giants, my first take. Ricky Pearsall versus the Jags. We've got a couple guarantees in there like CMC and Amon-Ra St. Brown. We don't want to get too crazy, but that's the lineup I'm rocking with this week. Week 4 contest just opened. All you have to do is choose 6 non-quarterbacks, and then the highest scoring lineup will win the most amount of money. If you have never downloaded the FastDraft app, use my promo code LAND. I'll match your deposit up to $50, and then you're going to get my week 4 rankings completely free. You can check that out in the description. My last player, you might have guessed it with my DFS lineup, I just told you, but we're going AJ Brown at the Bucks. Last week we told you, hey, AJ's going to have a good game against the Rams. He's going to be better. All the peripherals are there. He was getting 8 targets, now coming back with big dominant games. I think he's going to continue to be great here in week number 4 versus the Bucks. The Bucks are the 8th best matchup for your fantasy wide receiver. Nico Collins had 14 points against them. Last week, Garrett Wilson had 10 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. And if you remove week 1 and you only look at weeks 2 and 3, which is a larger sample size than 1 week, right? We're trying to do our best here. Then AJ Brown is actually 3rd in target share amongst wide receivers at 35%. He is still the dominant number 1 wide receiver on this team. I'm projecting at least 8 targets, a touchdown, and 17+ PPR points. And to end the video real quickly, here are 3 names that are not stars, but I really like starting them in week number 4 if, you're looking at a flex or a stream. Geno Smith versus the Bears, for example. Bears give up the second most points to quarterbacks. Michael Pittman versus the Rams. Great matchup. J.K. Dobbins versus the Bengals. These are all great plays if you're looking for some sort of, little boost of confidence in your flex spot or for a streamer. So I appreciate y'all so much for watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button and show some love. Subscribe if you found any value in today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Nothing but love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app, where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.